Okay, so now I am going to introduce our keynote speaker, and we're really excited to have you here, Mr. Martin. Thank you for coming. He is a nationally syndicated columnist with Creators Syndicate and is a senior analyst for the Tom Joyner Morning Show. I listen to you every morning. Where his daily segment is heard on more than 100 stations and 8 million people daily. He is the author of 3 books. He's the chief political editor for TV One Cable Network and host and managing editor of Washington Watch with Roland Martin. You're really busy, Mr. Martin. In his career, Martin has been showered with more than 30 awards for journalistic excellence, including being named the Journalist of the Year in 2013 by the National Association of Black Journalists, for his extensive focus on voter suppression and other issues of concern to African Americans during the 2012 election. Let's give him a hand for that. Very good work. He's a 2-time NAACP Image Award winner and has been named by Ebony magazine on 3 occasions as one of the 150 most influential African Americans in the United States. Martin spent 6 years as a contributor for CNN, appearing on numerous shows and earning accolades near and far for his no-holds honesty, conviction, and perspective on various issues. And in 2009, CNN was awarded the Peabody Award for its outstanding 2008 election coverage, of which Martin was a member of the best political team on television. And that's why we have him here. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Roland Martin.
So how we doing? All right, y'all straight? All right, good. Glad to be here. Glad to see you here. A couple folks were worried, like, oh my God, he's gonna get here. I'm like, chill, don't worry about it. My office calling me. I said, you know, DC traffic, brother, I had to take a detour. I said, we're here. I said, I know where the hotel is. The White House Correspondents' Dinner is always in this hotel. So I said, not like, I don't know where it is. Again, so glad to be with you, seeing some of you. Folks have been tweeting. I've tweeted some of you back. Hit you back. Say something crazy, I will hit you right back. Do understand. I love it when young folks think they know social media better than folks that are older than them. I'm like, please. So I got 350,000 followers. You don't want to mess with me. So we've been having a good time chatting on social media, chatting with some of you. And it was probably wise of Jesse to talk about him being a prominent Omega. He's just mad because he couldn't get an Alpha. And please let your CEO Don Thompson and Alpha know what I said. You know, if you had acted up, I can text them at the crib. So, I'll let you know. And if he don't answer, I call his wife Liz. Right. See, he's gonna be real nice the rest of the program. He's real nice. So when we mentioned Omega, I said, I can go ahead and take care of this real quick. Wasn't enough room in our pocket. He had to go somewhere. I understand. It's all good. So again, just wanted to, when she said it, I said, let me go ahead and handle this right now. And Earl, if I got here earlier, you'd asked me, I still wouldn't have had an answer for you because one, I don't write speeches. I would have said, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And one of the reasons I wrote a speech one time. Didn't even read it. I said, why in the hell did I sit down and write that speech? I said, I wasted all that time. But it is interesting, though, what you talked about, because we are coming on the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And one of the reasons I always say that is because people make the mistake of calling the March on Washington as if folks took a walk that day and that was no reason for the march. And Earl hit it on the point that it was a radical economic speech. And so, too many people, you're right. I mean, for years, and I finally told the folks at CNN, I said, damn it, y'all asked me to talk about a dream one more time. I'm cussing somebody out. Because if you understand actually what happened, the I have a dream portion of that speech was not in the written speech. It was not in the written speech. It actually was added. And in fact, Dr. King had done that portion in different variations over the previous 2 months, including in Detroit when they had a significant march there in June. And the reason that is important because Earl is right. What happens is it's easy for folks to get caught up in the dream part because it is essentially unattainable. See, we can all be happy and nice. Oh yeah, content of character is all wonderful. But we don't like to deal with the heavy lifting, which is the rest of the speech. And if you have not read the full speech, if you have not listened to the full speech, you should do that tonight because you will get a real understanding of how radical of an economic message it was. And it bothers me immensely when I hear folks, especially African Americans, talk about Dr. King as if, first of all, like he was the only speaker that day. That's first. He wasn't. In fact, the last surviving speaker on the main program is Congressman John Lewis. And it bothers me because if you look at that point, 63 till his death in 68, he really was shifting from the issue of desegregating lunch counters and voting to dealing with economics. If you read Harry Belafonte's memoir, he talks about how it was a focus on economics. They were planning the Poor People's Campaign in Washington, D.C., where literally they were bringing poor people to live on the mall in Washington to show as an example of the reality of poverty in this country. And so I hope over the next couple of weeks, as you watch TV, you're going to hear the same usual folks. You're going to hear folks in the media, they're going to keep saying the dream, the dream, the dream. They will totally ignore the rest of the speech. It should be our responsibility to say, hey, why don't we deal with that part? Because that's so important. And there really is a tie-in what we're going to talk about because as I was driving, I said, well, they asked me to talk about STEM and the importance of STEM and how do we drive that. And I thought about the best way possible. And anytime you got this many black folks in the room, you got the title of what you're going to speak about, like you're at church. Anybody non-black, we call it, let me tag this text. You've been to a black church, go with one of your friends, you'll know. And so I actually called it Show Me the Money. And let me put this out right now. Some of you might think what I'm about to say, man, that's crass. Did it have to be so out front? And I'm going to tell you right now, yes. Because what happens here's a mistake that we make when we are talking about jobs and opportunities and how do we connect with young people. Folks always say, I really hate it when I go to schools and they ask me how much I make. And then what happens is we then say, that stuff really not so important. You lying. Because you like getting paid. I ain't met anybody who said, you can just keep the check. I've never encountered that person. And the reason I talk about Show Me the Money, I think about a conversation that I had with Frank Clark when he was the CEO of ComEd in Chicago. Frank and I were in his office. It was just the two of us. And I had interviewed Frank for something. We were just having a conversation, a meeting, just the two of us. And Frank said, Roland, I'm really concerned about where we're going with young black boys and young black girls. And he said, as a CEO of an energy company, I really want us to do something about this issue of STEM. And I said, well, and I kind of figured out where he was going. I said, well, Frank, let me ask you a question. I said, when you go to schools, what happened? He said, well, Roland, I go to schools. And he said, the kids want to ask me about, what I make and stuff is not important. I said, Frank, first of all, Frank, you're the CEO of ComEd. I said, how can you be shy about talking about how much you make when your salary in the SEC filing? I said, Frank, your salary public. It ain't like it's private. I said, Frank, why don't you do this here? I said, the next time you speak, this is what I want you to do. I want you to put on your best suit. I want you to put on your Rolex. I want you then to have tell them to have all the kids to be on the lawn or on the school front when you drive up in your chauffeur-driven car. He looked at me like I was crazy. I said, then when you walk in and you go into the auditorium and the first kid who says, how much you make? I want you to stand there and proudly say $4 million. I said, and at that point, Frank, you will have the immediate attention of every person in the room. And he looked at me and he said, seriously? I said, yeah. I said, Frank, we do the opposite in order to capture somebody's attention. We talk about sacrifice and the importance of getting the degree and all that sort of stuff like that. I said, if you were in the 5th and 6th grade, all you want to know is how much you make. I said, Frank, the reason you do that is because the moment you do that, you've gotten their attention, but more importantly, you now understand what makes them tick. I said, Frank, when you were in the 5th, 6th grade, you were asking the same question. I said, and if we are operating in a world where we are competing with popular culture, and we are competing with entertainment, movies, rap, we're competing with athletics, we're competing with a generation who sees dollar signs, who sees bling. I said, so why not? Why not show your bling and talk about your bling to get somebody's attention? And he looked at me and he said, man, that's a good thought. I said, Frank, that is the mistake that we make when we're trying to capture somebody's attention. I said, because we're not thinking about putting ourselves in their shoes. We're trying to downplay those things. And I said, dude, you live in a 15,000 square foot crib? I said, so when you begin to think about your lifestyle, you begin to think about what you do, you then can say, I got all of this as a result of science and technology and math. I said, Frank, when an athlete talks about being at the top of their game, they just don't say, well, I got here by happenstance. Yeah, they recognize the amount of money they make, but then the athlete talks about the work ethic, talks about what I had to do to get here. I said, you then have the exact same conversation that they have in terms of this is what it takes for you to get to where I am. I said, now you put this thing in context because what you said is this is sort of the end of the rainbow, but this is what you have to do to get to that point. I said, it is the exact same conversation. I said, when you talk to any rapper, I said, do understand, a lot of us don't have an appreciation, what many of them do. I said, but when you have folks who literally are spending 6, 7 consecutive days and nights around the clock in a studio, that's work ethic. I said, it's the same thing. It's simply not, I just hop up, I'm rapping, I'm on stage, you got a contract. It doesn't happen that way. I said, and so in order for us to change the paradigm in the 21st century, we are going to have to shift the way in which we interact and talk about STEM, and that can get somebody's attention. So think about this for a second. How many of you, who are the folks who operate in corporate America, raise your hand in terms of you are an executive in corporate America? Raise your hand. All right. I guarantee you, y'all have some of the most boring campaigns in the world trying to get a kid's attention. She covering her face down here front. She's like, man, he ain't lying. He ain't lying. Do any of you recall, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, walking through train stations and airports, or even looking at some of the magazines, when they had this photo shoot of folks who were in academics and science and technology, some of the other areas. It was a very interesting campaign. I remember one of the astronauts. He was in one of them, and it was a great photo shoot because they all looked like rock stars. And that's what caught my attention. I walked through the airport, and I went, man, that's the hell of a, who's that? I said, that's a bunch of damn geeks. Earl said it earlier, so I can call y'all geeks since y'all both can say it. You get mad at me, you get mad at him. I did. I stopped. Mind y'all, I'm in the business of media. I'm in the business of images and words. I understand how you're able to change folks' perceptions. And I see this amazing ad, and they were touting individuals who ordinarily would never be in a publicity campaign. And I love the ad because it made what they do sexy. They were hot. They were rock stars. And what happens, now think about it. When universities go to high schools to recruit athletes, they don't walk in there with a basic, boring shot of a player in some khakis and a polo. In fact, they don't even show you another player in the university uniform. I went to Texas A&M. We walk in and we show them in their NFL uniform because they're trying to get the player to say, you come here, you might be here. And so when we walk in, all of a sudden we say, oh yeah, you're a cornerback. Well, in the 3 of the last 5 years, we had X number of players who were drafted in the first round. 2 of them were defensive backs. All of a sudden the players, got my attention. So the last time you recruited, did you recruit as if the people who you employ are already stars? Are you positioning them as all-stars? It's the exact same thing that happens in athletics. So if we think differently about how we are positioning individuals who are working in STEM to then show the next generation that these are indeed superstars, all-stars, sexy jobs, get paid well, you all of a sudden might connect with the next generation in a whole different way. And so every time I think about that ad, that's what I think about. And I begin to think about how you even look. Can you imagine if your company, and I know some of y'all about to really freak out, so just go ahead and put both hands over your face. Imagine, okay, I'm going to use Earl since he had the cargo shorts on earlier and the green shirt. Now think about this for a second. Imagine, Earl, what kind of car you have? Go ahead and say it. You got BMW, okay, all right. Now, I want y'all to imagine this ad. Imagine a poster or a magazine ad, and it's a photo of Herb in cargo shorts, a polo and some shades with the headline that says, in front of his BMW, with the headline says, I'm a baller. I want you to think about that for a second. I'm a baller. Somebody look at that ad, they gonna immediately go, who this brother? They gonna say, I ain't never seen this brother, so how he a baller? But then when you begin to explain who he is, what he's done, and how he's gotten there, that qualifies as a baller. You are taking contemporary language and you are translating it in a way where you can connect with somebody who ordinarily would not think that way. And I guarantee you 9.9 out of 10 of y'all in this room would have never thought, I can call one of our IT folks a baller. Yes, you can, because first of all, if you look at the median income in America, and then when you look at the percentage of Americans who make in excess of $100,000, it's only 2%. See, I love folks when they say, I'm not the 1%. Yes, you are. Folks swear if they don't have a jet and an estate, they ain't the 1%. Yeah, it's a whole bunch of folks behind you making a whole lot less. But I really need you to think that way. And so as you are thinking about how you communicate, I mean, imagine if you are, let's say you're in Chicago or Detroit, and let's say you have pinpointed 6 or 8 students who came through a specific high school who are now operating in this industry. If I'm going to that high school, I am setting them up and positioning them as academic or STEM or BDPA all-stars. And their poster is going to look like they're all-stars. And I'm going to present them as all-stars. I am trying to create this mood and this attitude that this area is desirable, it is wonderful, it is sexy. And on that point, you also have to understand that we can't talk about STEM education, but then don't communicate to people the vast variety of jobs that are available under that banner. The average person ain't got a clue about the job that falls. You say STEM, the person say STEM. Man, let me also say, that really ain't a sexy phrase. I'm just saying. Y'all, look, if you put together that poster, bling out STEM. I mean, it needs to be popping. I'm just letting you know. Because just having it by itself in a basic Arial font ain't gonna do it. But you really have to do that. Because if I tell somebody, you want to be a television anchor, they get it immediately. You want to be a reporter, they get it immediately. You want to be a newspaper editor, they get it immediately. But if you are not walking people through, here the variety of jobs and how they can operate in this space, then somebody goes, I don't want to do that. Because if you haven't been exposed to it, you simply don't know. And I believe what is happening is we're making the mistake in this country of talking about and communicating STEM, and I hear from the president, I hear from his cabinet members, I hear from educational people, and nobody is remotely explaining what in the world that is. Also, as a part of this process, I believe that as an organization, you got to get an attitude when it comes to this conversation. See, it stuns me. It stuns me. You talk about, Earl talked about March on March for Jobs and Freedom, that radical economic speech. It stuns me and cracks me up when there is a discussion about jobs and black folks, and they are having it with civil rights leaders. Now, other than their organizations, none of them have ever run a business. That's not knocking anybody, I'm just telling the truth. I'm not going to have a discussion about how to create jobs with folks who ain't never created a job. I'm going to talk to Bob Johnson or his ex-wife Sheila Johnson. I'm going to talk to Don Thompson. I'm going to talk to individuals who are entrepreneurs, who are CEOs, the folks who are out there who have P&L responsibility, who have to deal with getting loans and building capital, because that's who's actually doing it. And so when there are these discussions as it relates to STEM, as it relates to the next generation, you've got to be at the table. And you've got to be willing to call somebody out and say, hey, we need to go. Because see, do understand, this is the hot and sexy topic in the nation's capital. See, this is all political people. Ooh, it's STEM, 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 STEM. They on television, STEM, STEM. Then you ask them, what you do about it? Look, I'm just here to talk about STEM. I've had them on my show. I've had folks on my show. Before we went on summer hiatus, had a gentleman from the U.S. Army who came on to talk about specifically the kind of jobs in the United States Army that they are positioning folks for, so when they leave the U.S. Army, they have the skill set in this area. And I told them before we went on the air, I said, look, I said, look, you've got about 6 minutes. That's a long segment on the standing television. I said, now, I can't have you coming on talking generically. I need you to talk to my audience and say what specific kinds of jobs and how much they can make. Because that's what gets people's attention. And he did that. And I had to walk him through that. But I've had other folks come on and they're talking about it, and they're talking about it in sort of this generic way, and you're just sitting there going, ain't nobody home listening to you right now. If I'm sitting there going, hell, I ain't listening to you right now. And so I believe that what you have to do is align yourself with like-minded groups and say, no, we are the drivers in this area. I spoke to the Nesby Convention earlier this year. And I said, me and all these young folks, about thousands of high school and college students in the room, in this massive convention center. And I said, you should be driving the conversation among your peers as it relates to STEM, as it relates to science and technology and math and engineering and all these available jobs. I said, you should be looking to some adult. I said, because you have the ability to communicate with people who are 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 and 18 in a way they understand. I said, this is what it's all about. I said, because if we are going to change the dynamics and change what's happening with education, we're going to have to communicate it in a much different way in order to reach the next generation, because the way it's been done before and now ain't working. And I'm willing to abandon what doesn't work. And so I know some folks are sitting here saying, man, I don't know about a blinged out poster. I don't know about I'm a baller. I don't know about that. I don't really want to talk about, how much I make. But if we are going to somehow get folks to understand, because you see, I need you to connect while you have to talk about what the jobs are and how much they make, because they translate directly into why we have to emphasize the work ethic to get there. And then we have to take that to get them to understand that if you want that house, if you want to be able to build your family, if you want to create wealth, if you want to drive a certain car, if you want to live a certain way, if you want to get out of a certain neighborhood, these are all the things you're going to have to do to get there. And that's why I'm telling you how I think we have to communicate it, because we can't talk about our failing schools. We can't talk about our failing neighborhoods. We can't talk about what is happening economically with African Americans when just 25 years ago, in the last 25 years, the gap has widened as it relates to white wealth and black wealth. First of all, 53% of black wealth has been wiped out in the last 5 years because of the home foreclosure crisis. 53%. Elizabeth Warren, when she was on my show 3 years ago, said it will take black America 2 generations to recoup what we lost from 2007 to 2012. Not 2 generations to catch up. That means 2 generations, that means 36 years to recoup what we lost in 5 years. Now we begin to understand the numbers. There's a $95,000 gap between white wealth and black. The average black family today, in terms of wealth, is $5,000. The average for a white family is $100,000. So if you take a $95,000 wealth gap today, and then put that with a significant dropout rate today, and then put that with the percentage of those folks who don't drop out, who then go on to a four-year institution, but not just go on, but graduate, you then can pretty much project that probably by in one generation from now, that wealth gap will widen even further. Another reason why I think you have to look at this differently, because, and if you're a young person, you should go ask somebody who's having to deal with this right now, who's older, and it's a reality. If we don't change this conversation, you who are right now 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, you are going to have to confront the reality that you are going to be financially taking care of a number of your family members in the next 5 to 10 years. See some of y'all don't want to see the people who want to clap, they go, man, I'm doing that right now, dog. I'm just being real. Because see, do understand, for every $100, for every $20, for every light bill you pay, for every phone bill you pay, for every 1 or 2 month rent you pay, for every hospital visit you pay, for every set of Pampers and diapers and baby milk you buy, you're going to look back and say, man, $20, $30, $50, $100,000 just evaporated. Now, that's money that's now gone that you can't invest, and you can't make interest off of, and you can't plow into your business, and you can't also plan for your future down the road. See, we want to be nice about this thing, as opposed to having some very difficult discussions with our own family members by saying, look, and do you understand, for most black folks, I'm not talking about when you start making $75,000 to $100,000. I'm talking about when you start making $30,000. That's how the economic situation in our community is so different, because when one is in that position, now you're in a position where he's pulling at you to help carry other folks. And so if we don't drive discussion now, we're going to look up and the next generation will do the exact same thing that we did. And I'm not saying don't help family. I'm not saying don't assist family. I'm raising 6 of my nieces right now. I don't have kids. But my wife and I are raising 6 of my nieces right now, and I can tell you, this is the 5th time we've raised my nieces. And I can tell you that if I had to go back and add up in terms of the resources, I probably can get to around $200,000. And that's dealing with education, that's dealing with after school, it's dealing with daycare, that's dealing with food, dealing with health care. And so this is a real fundamental issue for us in terms of where we are going to be as a community in the future. And so it requires us to have a different conversation today. It requires us to attack this problem in a different way. And I really believe that if we begin to communicate exactly what STEM is, exactly what the jobs are, exactly what the opportunities are, and then begin to understand that we as a nation, we are not even in a position for the next generation, whether they're black, white, or Hispanic, to be able to take 2/3 of the available jobs that will be there in the future. So if you begin the process of redefining the conversation, and not just say we've trained 25,000 over the years, but literally say, no, we're going to be even more aggressive and say, can we get to 25,000 in the next 5 years? And some folks will say, man, that's a whole lot. Well, it's possible that you as an organization can literally be the entity that transforms the black community educationally, economically, over the next 1 to 2 generations. Now, I want to close this way, and I want to illustrate this because a lot of people, they say, well, man, I don't really get all that. I don't see how, one organization can really, do that, okay? Let's see this. Why not have this row, the first 3 rows here stand up. First 3 rows. Now, I want to visually show you what has happened in our history that accurately proves what I'm talking about. There are more people, don't look at me, look at them. There are more people who are standing up right now than the number of people who were in a church basement in Montgomery in 1955. I want you to think about that for a second. There are more people standing up right now than the number of people who met in a church basement in Montgomery in 1955. When we look at history in the Montgomery bus boycott, folks go, oh my God, they boycotted for 381 days. Well, first of all, it was not planned for 381 days. If you go back and read, it was planned for 1 day. Then first day went pretty good. And then as that became 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 50,000 black folks did not get on buses in Montgomery. And after 381 days and the Supreme Court decision that ended segregated busing, then that's when the boycott stopped. But then the very group standing up right now, they then went, what's next? So all of a sudden, they said, we do some other stuff. So then they turned their attention to other issues. Jump 1960, 4 freshmen, stand up for me. Just 4 freshmen. 4 freshmen in college, stand up. 1, 2, 3. You a freshman? Sit your behind. One of the brothers who was stuck in the forest for about 30 years. Got lost on his way to high school. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Jump to 1960 when 4 freshmen at North Carolina A&T decided we're just going to go to that lunch counter and we are going to change how we're served. 4, I didn't say 400, 4. What then happened was that spread like wildfire all across the South, and that's how lunch counters became desegregated. That's 1960. Then you go to Freedom Riders, and then you go to March on Washington, then you go to Voting Rights Act, then you go to Civil Rights Act, then you go get the 68, you get the Fair Housing Act, then you get with Nixon becomes president, Arthur Fletcher, then affirmative action comes in a period of 13, I'll say 13 years. I'll use 68 sort of as the ending marker. In a period of 13 years, Jim Crow was brought to his knees and America was transformed, but it started with a handful of people sitting in a church basement in Montgomery who said, we're going to do a one-day boycott. If you go to Serbia today, there's an MLK drive. We saw that Arab uprising dealing with Tunisia, then Egypt, then Libya, then Bahrain. There were folks wearing I am a man signs during that uprising, which were the same sign black men wore in Memphis in 68. When Lech Walesa, stand back up. It don't matter. Alpha, stand up. Hitler led the solidarity marches in the stockyards in Poland, they were singing, "We shall overcome." When they were fighting for democracy in Eastern Europe, they were singing, "Lift every voice and sing." So the world has looked at what we did, what our ancestors did, and they have said, if they could do it, so can we. So if, now y'all see, so if a handful of people in a church basement could launch what became an international campaign, if 4 college students could launch what became a city movement that changed cities across America, well then tell me what the number of the people in this room could do solely on this issue. For you to get it in your mind that you don't have to call a State of Black America in STEM. You don't need to call a big gathering. You don't need to call a symposium or a meeting. You already have the infrastructure that could totally redefine this discussion, that could transform education in African Americans, which in turn can totally change the economic dynamics of this community for generations to come, if you said we are going to be the one who will lead this battle. If you accept that challenge, you should be able to come back here next year and use this gathering not as an opportunity to pat yourself on the back, but to say, this is what we were able to accomplish in the previous year. This is our annual address, if you will, and this is how we were able to lead the movement to transform education and to transform this STEM discussion. And if you do that, what will happen is this: political leaders and business leaders, educational leaders will have no choice but to make sure that you're at the table having the conversation, because you will be able to say, we're not talking the talk, we're walking the walk, and we have the results to prove it. My job is to report what's happening. My job is to allow you access to my platforms to tell the story. My job is to fight for diversity in my industry, to talk about ownership as well. And so you have to make sure that the people who are leading this fight are folks who are just like you. It can't be folks who have STEM as one of 30 priorities on their agenda. If you study our movement, there were people who stayed in their lanes. King and the Preachers, SCLC. Whitney Young and business folks, National Urban League. Roy Wilkins and NAACP, grassroots. Dorothy Height, National Congress of Negro Women, dealing with the sisters. SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, dealing with young folks. Folks understood what their lane is. You know exactly what your lane is. You know exactly where we need to go. You know exactly how we need to get there. So my suggestion to you is take the wheel, get behind that car, and get to moving.